Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. It took me a while to find something to paint this time around, and I decided on the horseshoe I found down while traveling in Oregon. Today's the day we paint it. With this one, again, it's more of a rusted metal, much like the antique shears previously. If you haven't seen that, link in one of these corners. So we're going to incorporate some blues and browns, of course, some violets, some greens, and some pinks. This is kind of my strategy I think I'm going to work on. And you can see that you can really add color to make anything interesting. The key here is the colors that you add to that particular subject. Wherever you put them, they need to be the same value as what you have down already. And I'll show that in the video and hopefully put some narration along with it and indicate exactly when and where I do that. So we'll start off with the sketch here, and the lines I'm putting in just indicate the edge of the frame positions so I don't get objects too close to the edge. And then I'll start laying in the base of the still life itself, and then I'll start putting in the horseshoe as well. And one thing I want to mention is drawing is nothing more than putting the right shape on the canvas or on your piece of paper in relationship to everything else. And so you'll see me pause throughout the drawing, and I'm just making sure that the marks that I'm putting down are in the right spot in relation to something that I've previously added before. So here I am putting in the left arm of the horseshoe because I want to make sure everything's a little bit over to the left but not too close to the edge. And you'll see me put in the base because that's fairly easy. But as I move to the right hand arm, I decide that I need more information. So then I'll put in the shadow of the left hand arm, and this will help provide me the spacing for this distance between the two arms, because if I would have started off bringing it too close, it would look cramped. So I put the shadow in, and then I can put this following arm in relationship to that shadow in the left hand arm. You can see me draw a line over just to make sure I have the right position of that shape. And it's just a matter of doing this over and over again, and eventually you'll have your drawing. And I like to use straight lines a lot because it frees me up a lot more. Drawing with curves, if you make a mistake, you got to keep on going over it and it gets dirty fast. So using the straight lines, you can see the angle and the shape of everything that's needed to be done. Now we're getting straight into the painting. The darker the front of the base, and then the orange card that I have underneath the horseshoe, and I just mask it in with a general orange value, pretty bright. And here I am laying in the background, just massing it in, and as you see, I'll jump to the right hand side. The right hand side is cooler than the left hand side, so we get a gradation from warm to cool. Later on you'll see me adjust it so it's a lot lighter and warmer on the left and cooler and darker on the bottom. So I threw in my shadows to give me a good base for darks. I will adjust them, but not so much. Now I am laying in the mid-tone, or I guess the local color of the rust. But you'll see even within that I have a yellowy brown and a kind of a violet brown, but they're really close to the same value, so it works. And here I am throwing a few highlights, adjusting the shadow. I'm going to go in and put the reflected light right into that top part of that horseshoe, and then I'll tone it down. And I think I'll tone it down a little bit later as well, into the later in the video. Just putting in the local color, a little bit cooler at the top with the browns. Some areas a little bluer, some are a little oranger, some are more violet. Here's the bright side of the horseshoe. Adding the highlights down below, getting in the reflected light on the bottom part of the horseshoe, adjusting that as needed. And I'll adjust that a few more times throughout the painting, right? Painting is nothing more than a series of corrections. We'll move into the top area, and here I am adjusting the background. So it's a little bit lighter, a little bit warmer, so I get a better sense of light with that background. I'm going to adjust it one more time a little bit later. Putting in the shadows of the top part of the horseshoe. Adjusting the shadows at the bottom of the horseshoe to get a sense of depth and lay of the land. Adjusting the rusts again, bringing in a cool rust for the top of the bottom area there. You'll see me adjust that a little bit further on. Adding a little bit of the highlight within to get a better sense of light within this horseshoe. Fixing some of my edges, going from firm to soft to lost. Putting in some darks in the top part of that area here, getting those shadows to blend into the shadows on the paper behind it. Fixing my darks. That's a deep dark down below, so I got to get it a lot darker. Adding in a little more lights into the base. You can really see how that gives a sense of light. And then taking the opportunity to make it a little bit darker and cooler on the right hand side of the base. So you get a sense of light to dark, but also warmer to cooler. It's a general theme to all my paintings and how I approach them. Some cool highlights throughout. A little bit stronger reflected light at the bottom, adding a little bit of violet in the grooves where the notches for the nails come through, adding in the holes, the notches where the actual nails penetrate through the horseshoe. And I'll adjust that a little bit later as well, subduing it and then bringing it back. Using my rigger brush to bring in some finer warm light and finer cooler light throughout. A little bit of pink. I'll bring on some cool light in the top edges there just to give it a little bit of sense of variation. It's quite important to make a painting interesting with variation through the use of color and value and texture and edges. Believe it or not, now I'm using violet within that horseshoe. It's a rust color, but that violet works because it's the same value as the background rust color that I have. Adjusting the darks of the base. Here I add some more light and warmth into the card below, and there it really sparks up the sense of light hitting it. Here I'm bringing some pinks into the lights, and the pinks work because they're the same value as the lights that were there previously. Bringing in some blues into that rust as well. Here I decided to sign it, but then I came back about 5 minutes later and started recording again and adjusting. And here I am adjusting the background one last time, getting a little bit lighter, a little bit warmer, so it gives a stronger sense of light. It's always building and always changing. There again, changing the card, orange card underneath, doing some scratch techniques within the paint itself, doing some knife work. I needed to bring some nice crisp highlights that you can never ever get with a brush, whether it be reflected light or shadow edges or highlight edges. The knife is a fabulous tool, and I encourage everyone to try using it and getting comfortable with it. Bringing a little bit more orange into the horseshoe, more reflected light at the base to get a sense of light. A little more realism, even though it is more impressionistic. Deepening that dark, and then adjusting the edges within the shadows as well. Adding a little more highlight at the top, get a real sense of depth of the light between that and the shadow. And deepening those holes where the nails come through. Adjusting some edges in the shadows, and we're pretty much close to being done. You see one last time adjusting that reflected light. How many times did I change that? And it's all for a sense of the painting, making sure it reads really well. And this is the finished piece. Lots of colors throughout, and you can see the varying degrees of violets and oranges and yellows and blues and pinks. It really makes for a more dynamic painting. Thank you for staying till the end. A couple hours later, we have the finished piece. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of good tips out of it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. If you like this video, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe.